In 1982, Ted Danson took one look at Shelley Long during Cheers auditions and thought, "Oh no, that's a bad idea." But the cameras loved their chemistry. What viewers didn't see was the nightmare happening behind the scenes. Cast members started whispering. Script sessions turned into therapy sessions. After every table reading, one person would demand endless rewrites. By season 5, even the kindest co-stars had reached their breaking point. When she finally left, one cast member said it was one of the greatest first days they'd ever had. In 1982, 3 women stood at the edge of a life-changing decision. Shelley Long, Lisa Eichhorn, and Julia Duffy had all made it to the final round of auditions for a brand new sitcom called Cheers. The producers already had their eye on Shelley. They thought she was perfect for the role of Diane Chambers. But Shelley was busy filming Night Shift and refused to audition at first. She thought the part should just be offered to her. It wasn't arrogance, it was confidence mixed with pressure. Glenn Charles, one of the show's creators, had to convince her personally to read for it. And when she finally did, it was over. The team knew right away. That was it. She was Diane. But it wasn't just about her. The final test involved pairing each actress with the different actors auditioning for the role of Sam Malone. Shelley was matched with Ted Danson. The moment they started reading together, something sparked. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't smooth, but it was alive. The NBC executives saw it. They felt it. The chemistry between Danson and Long sealed the deal. That day, Shelley got the part. Julia Duffy didn't. And later that same year, she was awkwardly cast as one of Diane's friends in an early episode titled Any Friend of Diane's, playing opposite the woman who beat her. It stung in ways no one ever talked about out loud. For Ted Danson, working with Shelley Long was complicated from the very beginning. When he first met her during auditions, his reaction was blunt. He thought, "Oh no, that's a bad idea." He felt like everything about her was wrong for him. Their styles didn't match. She was theatrical, precise, dramatic. He was more relaxed, more instinctive. He later said, "I don't know. We were so different. Our styles, our approach, our everything is really different." And at first, it showed. Their early interactions were terrible. They couldn't even stay in the same room without some kind of tension. But the moment the cameras started rolling, something strange happened. It worked. She hit him with a line, and he hit her back even harder. The back and forth was electric. The audience loved it, even when they weren't speaking between takes, even when they couldn't understand each other as people, they came alive as characters. Ted knew she was brilliant, but that didn't make the working relationship any easier. From the very first episode, Shelley brought the same intensity she had used on stage to the sitcom world. She treated every line like it had to carry deep meaning. She didn't throw lines away. She asked questions. She gave notes. She changed scripts. And not just little changes. Sometimes entire scenes were reworked because she believed Diane needed more depth or cleverness. Assistant director Thomas LaFaro said she would spend hours after run-throughs talking with writers, pulling apart every scene and rebuilding it with endless questions. At first, the writers tried to support her, but over time, they grew tired. Glenn Charles said that after every single table reading, Shelley would immediately want to talk about it. It wasn't tantrums, it wasn't diva behavior. It was just constant analysis, constant questions. She was doing what she thought was right, but it was wearing everyone down. The cast started to notice. Nicholas Colasanto, who played Coach, was one of the first to connect with her. They both had theater backgrounds. He understood where she was coming from. At first, he became her strongest ally, but even he started to feel exhausted by the endless script discussions. He told producers quietly, that the rehearsals were starting to feel more like therapy sessions than comedy shows. He tried to help. He tried to explain how television worked. He had done big movies like Rio Bravo and The Hustler. He knew pacing. He knew timing. And he knew that sitcoms moved fast. But Shelley wanted to slow everything down. And eventually, even Colasanto couldn't keep up. He stayed polite in public. He never turned on her. But the weight of her process was starting to crush the team. Then came the Emmy. In 1983, Shelley Long won Outstanding Lead Actress in a Comedy Series. It was her moment. On stage, she smiled. She thanked the Cheers team. She even thanked Ted Danson, saying no actress could ask for a better partner. It should have been a victory for everyone. But behind the curtain, things were already falling apart. According to Thomas LaFaro, Shelley celebrated her Emmy win alone. The cast was already pulling away. They were whispering about her, saying she was too intense, too controlling, too much for a sitcom. What started as admiration for her talent had turned into quiet resentment. Even Colasanto had stepped back. She was successful, but she was alone. The show was winning, but she was isolated. Shelley saw Diane Chambers as more than a character. She lived her. She arrived early every day, practiced monologues in her dressing room, and stayed late for deep script discussions. Producer Ken Levine called these sessions the Diane Inquisition. What should have been a 15-minute note session could become 2 hours. Over time, it wore everyone down. The tension wasn't because she was mean. Ted Danson said it clearly. There's not a mean bone in Shelley's body. But her process was slow and demanding, and it made a fast-paced show hard to run. As seasons passed, things didn't get better. In the 2012 GQ Oral History of Cheers, Glenn Charles said Season 5 was when things started to get a bit rough. Shelley's perfectionism reached its highest point. She questioned lines. She questioned direction. She pushed for extra takes. She stopped filming to fix hair or makeup details she believed disrupted Diane's character. The writers had to rewrite scripts, not because they were broken, but because she didn't think the lines fit Diane's world. This cut into other characters' time. It made the rest of the cast feel smaller, less important. Rhea Perlman once said, "It's not really something I can talk about. I can't go there." That silence said a lot. Shelley didn't mean harm. She believed she was protecting something important. Diane wasn't just a woman in a bar. She was an intellectual in a world that didn't get her. Shelley fought to make her real. But the cost was high. Long tapings, overtime pay, crew exhaustion, lost patience. John Ratzenberger joked that Diane was stealing the soul of the show. Everyone felt the drag. It became harder to hide. Ken Levine, who helped write the show, documented it all. He admitted Shelley brought remarkable depth, energy, sensitivity, and talent. He never denied that her work made the show better, but he also said it made the work harder. The energy she poured into Diane raised the bar, and also stretched production to its limits. Years later, in September 2024, Ted Danson appeared on the Smartless podcast and opened up again. He told the same story. His first thought was still, "Oh no, that's a bad idea." He remembered how different they were, but he also remembered what it felt like when it worked. It was a fair fight. That's what made Sam and Diane feel real. In 2025, on Andy Richter's show Where Everybody Knows Your Name, Danson admitted he told producers not to cast her. She'd be terrible, he warned, but producers ignored him, and he laughed, saying, "Usually when they did the opposite of what I said, it worked brilliantly." He still praised her. He said she was a brilliant character actor who put us on the map. He gave her credit where it was due. But that didn't change the past. Behind the scenes, their relationship stayed polite. Sometimes warm, sometimes cold. It was never easy. He once told people in 1987, "Our relationship, Shelley's and mine, has included not being happy with each other and being happy with each other." They got through 5 seasons together. They stayed professional. And the tension, oddly enough, helped. It gave Sam and Diane that edge, that feeling of something almost too real to be fiction. The audience loved it, but it came at a cost. The show was great because Shelley Long gave everything to it, but the set never fully recovered from it. When Shelley Long walked into the Cheers pilot audition in 1982, Ted Danson took one look at her and thought, "Oh no, that's a bad idea." He said it years later on a 2024 podcast, but even back then, something in the room felt off. They had chemistry on screen, yes. The kind that made you watch every argument between Sam and Diane like it was real. But behind the scenes, it was hard. He said it was sometimes horrible, just being in the same room with her. Rhea Perlman didn't say much at the time, but when asked about the tension in 2019, she didn't even hesitate. "Yeah," she said. Then she softened. "There was a little bit. She left, and then we had Kirsty, and life moved on." Shelley had a different way of working. She didn't just play Diane Chambers, she lived her. Every line, every glance, every moment had to make sense to her character. When Sam kissed Carla in a throwaway joke scene, Shelley went straight to the writer's office and cried. "Diane would be destroyed by this," she said. The writers explained that Diane wasn't even in the room. She wouldn't see it. Shelley just looked at them and said, "Yes, but I know." The showrunners had never seen anything like it. It wasn't just acting, it was like she was guarding Diane's soul. This wasn't a one-time thing. Her character talks became known as Diane dissertations. After read-throughs, she would sit down with the writers and dig into every word, every scene. Sometimes she'd spend hours debating why a punchline didn't work or why a glance didn't feel emotionally honest. Some writers started calling her the veto queen. She'd cross out jokes she felt were cliché. Others she'd reject for not fitting Diane's intellectual framework. Writers quit. One mid-season. The tension built. George Wendt, who played Norm, quietly told producers he was worried the show was becoming too focused on Diane. He thought the ensemble vibe was slipping away. But he never complained publicly. He was professional. He just wanted the bar to feel like a place again, not a stage for one character's journey. Behind all this, Shelley wasn't mean. That was the strange part. Ted Danson even said it. It would have infuriated you if it hadn't been purposeful. But it was. And there's not a mean bone in Shelley's body. She was just intense, focused, trained in theater. She came from a world where you asked questions and lived the character completely. That world didn't move fast like television. It didn't wrap up by 5 p.m. And Cheers was a fast show. The rest of the cast was all about rhythm and instincts. Shelley wanted analysis and depth. And slowly, the divide grew. By the time season 5 ended in 1987, Shelley had finished her contract. She'd signed for 5 years and kept her word. No storming off set. No last-minute tantrums. She just said, "I'm out of here." But even though the producers had known this might happen, it still sent panic through the studio. Everyone thought Cheers would fall apart without the Sam and Diane storyline. Critics predicted the end, but on Kirstie Alley's first day, Rhea Perlman felt the air shift. "One of the greatest first days," she said, "like when Woody came after Coach died." Suddenly, everyone could breathe. The tension had lifted. The cast started clicking again in a way they hadn't in years. But the story didn't end there. In 1995, Kelsey Grammer dropped a bomb in his memoir. He claimed Shelley had tried to get him fired. He said she publicly campaigned against Frasier and even insulted the show after winning a Golden Globe. "Every laugh I got, she wanted removed," he wrote. "Her efforts to get me off the show were relentless." But Ken Levine, one of the producers, fired back. In a blog post in 2013, he said Grammer's story was just not true, not remotely true. He said Frasier was kept because he was brilliant, and the writers loved the dynamic he brought. The show was fighting for survival in season 3. They wouldn't have carried a character just to be polite. Grammer, for his part, had problems of his own. His alcoholism was no secret. During the last season of Cheers in 1993, he became hard to work with. Co-stars noticed. Writer Dan O'Shannon described how Kelsey would stumble into the studio like his life was falling apart. Jimmy would say, "Action," and he'd snap into Frasier, pitch perfect. Then, cut, and he'd melt back into Kelsey. By 1996, during Frasier Season 4, Grammer crashed his Dodge Viper in Malibu while allegedly drunk. He went to the Betty Ford Clinic. The cycle continued. Even after all the drama, Shelley returned for guest spots on Frasier. She showed up, smiled, said her lines. The on-screen tension with Kelsey was still there, but maybe by then it was just habit. The cast was older. The wounds weren't fresh anymore. Still, Rhea Perlman couldn't bring herself to talk much about Shelley's working style in interviews. "I can't go there," she said in 2012. "I don't think it's worth it at this point in life." Shelley had never thrown tantrums. She never screamed. But her need for Diane to be perfect reshaped how Cheers was made. The writers even had to come up with secret script strategies just to keep things on schedule. During wedding episodes or big finales, they held back key plot details until the last minute. They didn't want Shelley rewriting emotional scenes through hours of character debate. On the surface, Cheers looked like the perfect sitcom. People laughed, drank, argued, made up. Everyone had their spot, everyone had their lines. But behind the cheers and clinks of beer mugs was a mess of jealousy, anger, obsession, and one bad joke that ruined a career forever. It started with a man named Jay Thomas. He played Eddie LeBeck, the ice hockey goalie who married Carla. He had a regular spot on a radio show, and one day a caller asked him what it was like to work on Cheers. Instead of being polite or vague, Thomas leaned into the mic and said, "It's brutal. I have to kiss Rhea Perlman." Rhea Perlman, who played Carla, happened to be listening to that exact show. The fallout came fast. She stormed into the producer's office, furious, and said the words that ended Jay's time on the show. "I want him off." The writers didn't hesitate. They wrote Eddie LeBeck out by killing him in a freak Zamboni accident, and then made it worse by revealing he was a bigamist with another wife who looked exactly like Carla. Jay Thomas later said on Howard Stern's show that he was crushed to lose the part. It wasn't a mistake in acting or timing, it was his mouth. One careless joke, and it was over. That wasn't the only tension on set. Shelley Long, who played Diane, brought a very different kind of trouble. She wanted every line to be perfect. She wanted to know every motivation, every detail. At first, the writers humored her. She would talk for hours after rehearsals, going over every part of her character, asking endless questions. Assistant director Thomas Lafaro said she thought she was the new Lucille Ball. At table reads, she'd finish her lines and then immediately start a discussion. Everyone else had to sit and wait while she dissected the script line by line. Ted Danson later said her process would have driven people mad if it hadn't come from such a sincere place. Even so, it caused cracks. Rhea Perlman admitted in 2019 that there was real friction. Shelley wasn't mean, but she slowed everything down. And for a cast that worked tight and fast, that was enough to make her feel like an outsider. Then came Woody Harrelson. He was 24 when he joined in season 4, and the rest of the cast was mostly in their 30s. They saw him as a threat, so they decided to humble him. First, they tried basketball. Harrelson crushed them. Next came leg wrestling on the grass by the stage. John Ratzenberger gave it a go. Woody beat him too. Then it was arm wrestling. Ted Danson wouldn't let go and ended up with a permanent elbow injury. Woody still won. Finally, they turned to chess, thinking they could beat him with brains instead of brawn. But Harrelson wiped the board with them there too. All of this happened in his first week. They couldn't win, so they started pranking him instead. Danson said if someone had a really awful prank in mind, they'd save it just for Woody. That's how far they went to deal with someone who wasn't even trying to dominate. He just did. Kelsey Grammer brought his own storm. He was convinced Shelley Long wanted him off the show. In his 1995 memoir, So Far, he wrote that she kept trying to sabotage him, saying she would ask the writers to cut every laugh he got. Shelley denied it. She said the only time she pushed back was when someone suggested her character, Diane, should get pregnant by Frasier. She said no, that wouldn't make sense. She didn't even know Kelsey was upset. Years later, she said it was a crime that he didn't just talk to her about it. He never brought it up. Just let it build. That quiet tension added to everything already boiling under the surface. They made peace years later, but the damage had already shaped how both of them remembered those years. George Wendt, who played Norm, brought chaos of a different kind. He was known for wild stunts and even wilder gifts. One time he gave shotguns to cast members. Actual shotguns. Paramount's security team was not pleased. On set, he'd join in dangerous pranks. Ted Danson remembered one time things got so out of hand, Wendt had to step in and save him. Some of them took mushroom trips together, just hoping they could make it through the day. Wendt's famous beer mug was filled with 3.2% near beer, just enough alcohol to keep the foam with added salt under hot lights. Sometimes he had to sip it, and it was disgusting. But he never complained. That's what Norm did. He showed up. He drank the beer. He nailed the line. Then behind the scenes, he lived like the party never stopped. In December 1986, Shelley Long shocked the world when she announced she was leaving Cheers. The news spread fast. For 5 seasons, she had played Diane Chambers, the sharp-tongued intellectual who sparred and flirted with Sam Malone every week. Their chemistry was the center of the show. So, when she said she was walking away to do films and spend more time with family, everyone panicked. The writers scrambled. The producers freaked. Fans couldn't believe it. The network feared the show wouldn't survive. Even Ted Danson, who played Sam, later admitted that hearing she was leaving brought him a strange mix of relief and dread. They had never had an easy working relationship. They clashed often. But when the cameras rolled, something clicked. Ted said it was magic. He'd push, she'd push back harder. They were complete opposites. He worked from the gut. She worked from her head. But it worked. Still, the tension off-screen was real. Rhea Perlman, who played Carla, didn't dance around it. When asked if there had been friction, she just said, "Yeah." And when Kirstie Alley walked onto set to take over the female lead, Perlman said it was one of the best first days she ever had. The entire energy shifted. There were fewer arguments, more laughs. No one had to tiptoe anymore. Even the producers could breathe. Glenn and Les Charles, who created the show, said they panicked for a full week after Shelley told them. Everyone believed Cheers couldn't work without the Sam and Diane love story. But when they let go of that storyline and leaned into the ensemble comedy, something changed. In 1987, during the first season without Shelley, Cheers hit #1 in the Nielsen ratings for the first time ever. James Burrows, the show's legendary director, later admitted that Shelley's exit re-energized the bar. Characters like Norm, Cliff, and Carla got more space. The writers had fun again. Behind the scenes, though, the sudden goodbye was a nightmare. The final episode with Diane was rushed. The writers had to find a way to end the 5-year romance, so they made her leave Boston to become a writer. The scene with Sam and Diane almost getting married, only for her to walk away last minute, was thrown together fast. Then they had to invent a brand new character from scratch, Rebecca Howe. Kirstie Alley took on the role and brought something entirely different. She wasn't a Diane copy. She was insecure, corporate, awkward. But it worked. The show had been forced to change, and it didn't just survive, it got better. While Cheers soared, Shelley's movie dreams started to fall apart. Her first big film after leaving was Outrageous Fortune in 1987 with Bette Midler. It made $52.9 million, but critics weren't kind. They said Shelley was just playing Diane again, only louder. She tried other movies like Troop Beverly Hills in 1989 and the Brady Bunch movie in 1995, but none turned her into the big screen star she wanted to be. Audiences couldn't see past Diane Chambers. By the mid-90s, her movie career was mostly over. She moved into TV movies and guest roles. Ted Danson said in later interviews that it was sad to watch. She had talent, but she never escaped the shadow of Diane. Kelsey Grammer never forgot how she treated him during those years. In his 1995 memoir, So Far, he said Shelley hated his character Frasier from the start. During her 1984 Golden Globe speech, she even called the Frasier storyline terrible. She told producers she wanted him gone, but instead of cutting him, they kept him longer, maybe just to spite her. Frasier had originally been written for 6 episodes. He stayed for 20 years. And in 1996, when Shelley appeared on an episode of Frasier, they wrote her as a mental patient in an asylum. Show creator Ken Levine later admitted that it was subtle payback. Shelley was out of movies, out of momentum, and there she was playing a version of Diane, who had finally lost her mind. The message was hard to miss. In a rare 2025 YouTube interview, Shelley finally admitted what she never had before. At 75 years old, she said she regretted leaving Cheers. Not right away, but over time. She said the writers had promised her more serious storylines, ones that showed Diane's depth, but they never came. She felt stuck playing the same romantic scenes over and over. She started blurring the line between herself and her character. And people on set started treating her like Diane instead of Shelley. She said it haunted her. Watching the show go on without her hurt more than she expected. When she came back for that Frasier cameo in 1996, Rhea Perlman said it was awkward. The set was cold. No one knew how to talk to her anymore. Old wounds had never healed. The distance between her and the cast was real, and it never truly closed. George Wendt, who played Norm, saw it all happen. Before he died in May 2025 at age 76, he gave one last interview. He said he always wished Shelley had stayed in touch. When she left, it opened up more space for him and other characters, but something always felt missing. When the cast got together at the 75th Emmy Awards in January 2024, Shelley didn't show. Everyone else was there: Ted, Rhea, Kelsey, John Ratzenberger. Even Woody Harrelson made it. George needed a cane that night. His nephew, Jason Sudeikis, helped him to the stage. But Shelley was gone. again. And George said that every time they tried to reunite, her absence made it feel incomplete. 2 months after that Emmy reunion, George died in his sleep. There had been a moment when things almost got better. In 2013, Shelley had a stroke. It scared everyone. Ted Danson visited her in the hospital. They hadn't spoken much in years. He said the silences between them were heavy. They talked, but it didn't fix anything. The resentment was still there. Rhea Perlman started speaking more kindly about Shelley after that, but the core of the cast never fully came back together. They'd moved on. She hadn't. Ted made peace with Kelsey Grammer before it was too late. In October 2024, on his podcast Where Everybody Knows Your Name, Ted apologized. He said, "I missed out on the last 30 years of Kelsey Grammer. I feel like it's my bad." Their friendship had ended over a small fight on set when Ted called out Kelsey for being unprepared. Kelsey later said he was drinking heavily and struggling with doubt back then. But neither man ever brought it up again, until they did. And then it was over. 30 years of silence, gone with a few words. Shelley never had that moment with the others. She often defended herself in interviews. She said the rumors about her being difficult were unfair. She said she was just thorough. She took her work seriously. She saw herself as the next Lucille Ball. Assistant director Thomas Lafaro said she'd spend hours talking with writers after rehearsals, trying to perfect everything. It wasn't mean. It wasn't dramatic. But it wore everyone down. Glenn Charles said it caused a split between her and the cast. Ted Danson said it wasn't easy working with her, but it was never pointless. He believed she was Diane, and that was how she worked. That was just her process. When the 2024 Emmy reunion happened and she backed out at the last minute, fans were disappointed. She had said yes, then she said no. Kelsey Grammer just shrugged and said, "Too bad." People started saying again what they always said. Maybe Cheers was better without Diane. Maybe it only found its real rhythm after 1987. But the truth was more complicated. Shelley Long helped launch that show. She helped make it smart and funny and unforgettable. But she also couldn't stay. And when she left, everything changed, on screen and off.